and God showed me some awesome things about who He is and how His character is displayed in Ruth. So come along and join me as we discuss that today. Hi again. So I'm going to talk to you about the book of Ruth. And I'm excited because Boaz in this story, he is the love interest of Ruth, right? And how he meets her and what happens is sort of like the bride of Christ and Jesus. So that's sort of what's being displayed here. And the character of the Lord just comes through the entire time. So I'm just going to kind of go through the book of Ruth. Don't worry, we won't read the whole thing. I'm just going to highlight some verses to you that really stood out to me as I was reading this. But Ruth was a Moabite, and the Moabites were descendants of Lot. They were considered foreigners. So they served many gods, and they were lost in sin. Ruth's husband died, so she was released to marry another person, but she had a choice. So she could go back to the sins and the idols of her people, or she could go along with Naomi and serve the Lord. So she chose to leave behind her old self and enter a new chapter of her life. She chose to care for her mother-in-law, who was a widow and had no one else to take care of her. Now, if you don't know that story, Naomi was her mother-in-law, and she was the mother of 2 sons, and she had a husband, and her husband died, and then her 2 sons died, all within a short period of time. And so she was filled with so much grief. She wanted to be called Mara, which means bitter, because she felt like God had made her life that way. He had made it bitter. So she kind of blamed God a little bit there, and she felt like she was abandoned by Him. So God, though, had already made provision for her in so many ways that she couldn't see. But He put Ruth with her to walk beside her and to take care of her and to honor her, even in her pain and her grief. So they went on and they came to Bethlehem, which is the birthplace of our Messiah, our Redeemer. Okay. So in Ruth chapter 2, we meet Boaz. Okay. So they came along to this place where there was a wonderful field. All these people were working, and Naomi told Ruth to go find a place to work and to glean behind the people, the women that gleaned in the fields, that worked in the fields. And she told her, just pick up whatever's left over and bring it back. So Boaz, who was wealthy and influential, owned the field that Ruth so happened to work in. So she asked if she could follow along in the fields behind the girls, and she was allowed to. She was hard at work for her widowed mother-in-law. And Boaz had heard and knew how she was helping Naomi in spite of her brokenness. Now, Ruth had brokenness too. She lost her husband. He died, and she had nothing. And she chose to leave everything and go with Naomi. So this is what's so cool about this. Okay. So you know about Hagar, who was Sarah's servant, Abraham and Sarah, right? And how she had given her to her husband as a wife so that they could have a son. And, she birthed Ishmael and all that through that, because that was sort of a little waver in their faith, right? Because they said, she said, I'm not going to be able to give you a baby. So here, just take my servant. So Hagar was given to Abraham. She gave birth to a son. And then she started to feel like, well, I gave him a son and you didn't. So, so she was kind of picking on Sarah. And so Sarah got so upset. she kicked her out. And so she was out in the wilderness and didn't have anything and sitting out there with her baby and thinking, I can't watch this boy die and I don't know what I'm going to do. And God met her there and spoke to her. And she named that place El Roi because she said, He's the God who sees me. El Roi means that. The God who sees. God saw her out there in the middle of nowhere, a servant who had been rejected and cast out. He said, go back to your master. It's going to be okay. I'm going to bless your son. You're going to be all right. I'm going to take care of you. God sees. I just love that. So here it was again. Boaz knew all about Ruth. She didn't have to go and say, well, I did this for my mother-in-law and I did that and you need to take care of me, because she didn't brag to anybody. She just worked. She had her head down. She just was doing the next right thing. Boaz was like, I know all about her. How she's a widow and how she came with her widowed mother-in-law and left her people and took care. Like she's doing all these good things. And he stood back and was like, all right, wow. So he said to her, stay here in this field and don't go into any other fields. And I've told my young men not to come near you, not to harm you. So he saw her. He protected her. He said, don't go to the right or to the left. Stay here. Follow me. Right? Just like Jesus says to us. Stay right behind the young women who are working. This reminds me of our inclusion with the Jews, right? The Gentiles are included, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. There's a lot of parallels here that just are awesome. So in verse 9, it says to see which part of the field they're harvesting in and follow them. She was allowed to gather the harvest too. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn. So he made provision for her. Boaz made provision for her. She didn't ask for it. He was watching out for her. And the water is the living water, right? Our salvation. Through the Jews, the men pour the water, right? How cool is that? In verse 12, the Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. That's Boaz. He's saying again, I saw what you did. He's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. That's our God. I love how many times we're drawn back to things that we've seen God do and say through Boaz, right? So in verse 13, she says, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. Again, we're being welcomed in. We're being grafted in, right? I love that. So we're being accepted because of Jesus. We're foreigners too, right? I love it. So verse 14, Boaz invites her, come here and eat. Get some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers. This is something that really stuck out to me because she was originally behind them. Now she's sitting beside them and eating with them. So we've been welcomed completely into the table. When we accept Jesus' invitation, we can come in and eat with him. He eats with us. He comes in when we accept his invitation. I love this. So again, it's provision. It's acceptance. Okay? It's abundance. And she ate until she was satisfied and had some left over. That's God. He always gives us more than we could ask for or imagine. She didn't ask for this. So in verse 15, when she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, let her glean even among the sheaves and do not reproach her. So he gave her more access. The more she came to be with him, the more access he gave her. Now he's not just letting her glean the scraps. Even the dogs get the crumbs from the master's table, right? But now he is purposely having his servants drop heads of barley for her. That's favor. God was showing his favor. In verse 18, it says she took it up and went into the city, the ephah of barley, right? She gathered that much. And her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She had also brought out and gave her the food she had left over after being satisfied. So those who are faithful in a little are given much, right? I love this. How many different parallels? Okay, in verse 22, it says, Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So again, we're seeing that protection. He's providing protection, provision, abundance for her. He's rewarding her. So in verse 13 again, 23 again, it says that she kept close to the young women, gleaning until the end of the day, the barley and the wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law, but she was working alongside the women. I love that. Okay, so in chapter 3, in verse 3, her mother-in-law tells her to take a bath and put on perfumes and, get herself all ready. Right? It reminds me of the bride getting ready for the bridegroom. We're getting ready for the bridegroom, right? So she was obedient and she honored her mother-in-law. And then it says that, she was told to go into the threshing floor and lay at his feet. And so she did. Okay. Uncover his feet and lay there and he'll tell you what to do. Okay. So in verse 10, this is so beautiful. He said to her, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter, for you have made this last kindness greater than the first, in that you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich." She saw the value in coming to him. Her protector, her provider. She didn't go after anybody else. She came to him. So I love that. It's just so beautiful. That was in verse 10, yes. So now he says, "I will redeem you. Don't you worry about it. I'm going to take care of this." So in verse 18, her mother-in-law says, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest until he settles it." I love this because it reminds me of the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus wouldn't rest until he settled the matter with the Lord. He cried out, he prayed, he said, if this cup could pass from him. It's just like how Boaz went and looked and said, "There is another Redeemer. I'm going to ask him. But if he doesn't do it, I will do it." Jesus said, "Can this cup pass from me?" But he said, "Not my will, but yours be done." No one else could pay the price. There wasn't any other Redeemer. Jesus was the only one who could pay that price. He's the only one who was worthy, right? So he prayed until his sweat was as drops of blood, and then he went off to pay the price for us. The disciples slept, but Jesus didn't. He didn't rest until the matter was settled, just like Boaz, right? Boaz didn't rest until the matter was settled. So in chapter 4, Boaz goes and he pays the price for the field and he redeems Ruth. And then he took her home and she became his wife when the harvest was gathered. And so when the harvest is gathered, the Lord will bring us home to the place that he has prepared for us. And we will celebrate as the spotless bride of Christ at the marriage supper of the Lamb. So they were married and she became his wife and she bore him a son. And she had Obed. And Obed means to serve, a servant, to work or worshiper. And the women of Bethlehem said, "Praise the Lord, who has now provided a redeemer for your family. Obed begat Jesse, who begat David, and on down the line to Jesus through Ruth, and Boaz. So how amazing is this? Because Obed means to serve or to be a servant, and he was in a line to Jesus. Jesus is our servant husband. What did he do? He got down on his knees and he wrapped his a towel around his waist and he washed the feet of his disciples. He served us. He showed us what to do as servant. And so I think that's so cool. And that's what Obed's name means. Obed was Ruth's son. They gave the son to Naomi, and she raised him as her own son. And all the women rejoiced around Naomi and say, "See, God has given you a son. He has looked favorably on you, Naomi." And so Naomi was not abandoned by God. He kept Ruth by her side and continued to bless her and provide for her through Ruth. Ruth kept bringing her back food and taking care of her and making sure she had provision. And so now she's the mother-in-law of this wealthy man who provided for her, took care of her, and gave her a son. Naomi thought she knew what was best for her, and she tried to send Ruth home so that she could go wallow in her misery, right? But God had other plans for her, Jeremiah 29:11, right? He gave her a daughter-in-law who became her daughter, and a new son-in-law, and now a beautiful baby boy to raise. She had great joy on the other side of the morning, right? She walked through the valley of the shadow of death, but she came out of that on the other side. And she had great joy. Joy comes in the morning, right? Sorrow may last for the night, but joy comes in the morning. And this child ended up being in the lineage of the Savior of the world. How great of a promise can you be given? You're part of the promise. She's part of the story. All throughout this story, we see the character of God displayed before us. Compassionate, understanding, seeing and knowing all of our troubles. It's providing, sustaining, protecting, favoring, abundance, acceptance, grace. He's our Redeemer, our Savior, our loving husband, the only one worthy to redeem us. Oh my goodness. That's our God. His character is displayed in Ruth. I encourage you, go read Ruth. I did sort of a quick Cliff Notes version, but oh, this is so beautiful. It's just such a beautiful love story, romance, redeeming what it was lost, what was broken. God redeemed it. Have you ever heard about what they do in Japan? When China is broken, they glue it back together with gold. They fill the cracks with gold so that it becomes this new beautiful work of art, piece of more beautiful than it ever was before, because the cracks were filled with gold. Isn't that amazing? God takes something that was broken and makes it beautiful. Beauty for ashes, right? I'm reminded of this one thing that happened to me. I was on a cruise ship, which, obviously that's a big blessing, but I was young and I was, going through some stuff in my life, and it had just rained. And so I'm looking at these droplets of rain on the railing, and I looked out over in the ocean. I'm thinking, man, that ocean is so vast. I mean, I couldn't see any land anywhere. It was as far as the eye could see. And I just said, "Oh, I love you, God. I love you." And God immediately spoke to me in this still, small, quiet voice, and he said, "You see that raindrop on the railing there? That's your love for me. Do you see that ocean out there that's as far as you can see? You can't see land anywhere. That's my love for you. That's God's love for you."